A billionaire hired movers for his new $14 million penthouse in Tribeca, 5 men and 1 woman. She carried a 350-pound refrigerator up 4 flights of stairs. Alone. He didn't call for help. He didn't look away. He didn't laugh. He stood at the top of the stairwell, frozen, watching a stranger do something that shattered every assumption he'd built about strength, about poverty, about the people he walked past every single day without seeing. What he did next would change both of their lives. But not for the reasons you think. Because the woman on that staircase was carrying far more than a refrigerator. 41-year-old Devin Hayes had stopped believing in luck the day his mother died. As CEO and founder of Hayes Meridian Capital, a real estate investment fund worth $8.7 billion, he had built something most people couldn't even dream of. And he'd built it from nothing, from Brownsville, Brooklyn, from a 1-bedroom apartment with bars on the windows and roaches in the walls. Now he owned a penthouse in Tribeca, $14.2 million. Top floor of a converted brownstone overlooking the Hudson River. 6,200 square feet of Italian marble floor-to-ceiling windows and silence. The kind of silence that only money could buy, and only loneliness could fill. His Patek Philippe watch cost $380,000. His Tom Ford suits were custom-fitted at a private atelier in Midtown. His John Lobb shoes were hand-stitched in England, shipped in velvet bags that cost more than most people's rent. A driver named Franklin waited downstairs every morning at 6:45 sharp in a black Range Rover that Devin never thanked him for. He had a corner office on the 52nd floor of One World Trade Center. He had dinner reservations at restaurants where the waiting list stretched 14 months. He had the personal phone numbers of senators, hedge fund managers, and 3 former presidents. He had everything a man could earn in a single lifetime, and none of it was enough. Not the art, not the views, not the $300 bottles of bourbon he drank alone on Tuesday nights while staring at a city full of people he didn't know how to connect with. Every room he entered fell quiet. Every handshake came with an agenda. Every friendship had a price tag, spoken or unspoken, and Devin had learned to read the invoice before the smile even finished forming. His assistant, Denise Palmer, was the only person alive who could say no to him without flinching. 53, sharp-tongued, ruthlessly organized. She trailed 3 steps behind him at all times, not out of deference, but out of strategy. Close enough to intervene. Far enough to let him make his own mistakes. She'd worked for him for 11 years. She knew his coffee order, his blood type, his schedule down to the minute, and the fact that he hadn't had a real conversation with another human being in longer than either of them wanted to admit. Devin didn't talk about feelings. He talked about returns, acquisitions, portfolio, performance, and exit strategies. He ran his life the way he ran his fund. Calculated, controlled, emotionally hedged against loss. Because Devin Hayes had already lost the one thing that mattered, and he'd spent 22 years making sure he never lost anything again. Pauline Hayes raised her son alone in a neighborhood that swallowed boys whole and spit out statistics. She worked 3 jobs. Housekeeping at the Marriott in downtown Brooklyn from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Then laundry service at a dry cleaner on Fulton Street until 6. Then bussing tables at a Dominican restaurant on Pitkin Avenue until close. Sometimes close meant 11. Sometimes it meant midnight. Sometimes it meant Pauline walking home in the dark with pepper spray in one hand and bus fare in the other, too tired to be afraid. Her hands were rough as sandpaper, cracked at every knuckle. Nails filed down to nothing from years of chemical cleaners and hot water and gripping things that didn't belong to her so she could afford the few things that did. But every night, no matter how late, those same hands held Devin's face like he was made of glass. Gentle, steady, warm. She had one lesson she repeated like a prayer. Nobody's going to carry you, Devin. You carry yourself, or you get left behind. He heard it before school. He heard it when he cried about hand-me-down sneakers. He heard it when the older boys on his block tried to recruit him into corners he'd never come back from. Carry yourself. Carry yourself. Carry yourself. And he did. He carried himself out of Brownsville, out of public housing, Out of every room that tried to keep him small, he got a partial scholarship to Baruch College, worked overnight security to pay the rest, graduated with honors, started trading real estate with borrowed money and a borrowed suit at 24. By 30, he owned his first building. By 35, his first fund. By 41, an empire. But Pauline never saw any of it. She collapsed at the Marriott on a Tuesday morning in March. Devon was 19. She'd been complaining about chest pains for weeks, but she didn't have insurance, didn't have time, didn't have the luxury of being sick. The doctors said it was cardiac arrest brought on by chronic exhaustion, a body that had simply been asked to carry too much for too long. She died 11 days before Devon received his first scholarship letter. The acceptance was still in the mailbox when he came home from the hospital. He opened it sitting on the kitchen floor, alone. After that, Devon carved his mother's words into the foundation of everything he built: carry yourself. But somewhere along the way he sharpened the lesson into something harder, something colder. If you were poor, it was because you hadn't carried hard enough. If you were struggling, you hadn't earned your way out yet. Helping people wasn't kindness. It was interference. It made them soft. It made them dependent. It made them weak. He forgot the second thing his mother used to say, the part she always whispered after the first, usually when she thought he was already asleep. But when you make it, baby, you reach back. You always reach back. Devon remembered the first half like gospel. He buried the second half like grief. He built an empire on his mother's bones and convinced himself it was a tribute. But tributes don't forget half the lesson. 8:17 A. Saturday, March. Manhattan was cold but bright, the kind of late winter morning where the sun hits glass towers and makes the whole city look like it's made of money. Devon stood inside his new penthouse for the first time as its owner. The space was empty. Bare walls, exposed brick, hardwood floors that stretched in every direction like a ballroom nobody danced in. The movers were scheduled for 8:30. Denise had booked them. Not the usual crew. Devon's preferred moving company, the one that handled corporate relocations with white gloves and insurance policies thicker than phone books, was booked out for 3 weeks. So Denise found a smaller outfit, Henderson & Sons Moving Company, based out of Jersey City. Family-owned, licensed, insured, but nothing fancy. The kind of company that showed up in a truck with a dented fender and got the job done before lunch. Devon didn't care who moved his furniture. He cared that it arrived undamaged and on time. Everything else was background noise. The building was a converted brownstone, 4 stories, pre-war charm, renovated into a single luxury residence with a private entrance, a rooftop terrace, and an elevator barely large enough for 2 people standing shoulder to shoulder. The elevator worked fine for boxes, fine for luggage, fine for human beings who didn't mind close quarters, but it was far too small for a 700-pound marble dining table, too narrow for a sectional sofa that stretched 9 feet, and completely useless for a full-size Sub-Zero refrigerator still bolted inside its shipping crate. For the big items, there was only one way up: the staircase. 4 flights. Wide enough for the original brownstone's 19th century residence, but tight enough to make every delivery a calculation of angles, weight, and willpower. The truck pulled up at 8:31. Devon watched from the 4th floor window, phone in hand, answering emails. A broad man in his late 50s climbed out of the cab first. Big Roy Henderson, 58 years old, 6'3", 240 pounds, with forearms like bridge cables and a voice that carried across the street without trying. Behind him, 4 workers unloaded in orange t-shirts with the company name across the back. Devon didn't go downstairs to greet them, didn't wave from the window, didn't acknowledge them at all. He heard the front door open, heard boots on hardwood, heard the sound of boxes being stacked and furniture being unwrapped. He kept scrolling through his inbox. An investor in Dubai, a zoning dispute in Austin, a board meeting on Monday that required his attention more than the people carrying his life up 4 flights of stairs. He didn't notice the 5th mover until she was already inside. It was the boots that caught his attention first. Not the sound, the rhythm. Every other mover hit the stairs with heavy, uneven thuds. Labored breathing between floors, grunts on the turns. But this set of footsteps was different, steady, measured. almost mechanical in their consistency, like a metronome made of steel and discipline. Devon looked up from his phone. A woman was coming through the door, carrying a box marked Kitchen Fragile on her right shoulder. One hand steadied the base. The other gripped the doorframe as she pivoted through the narrow entrance without breaking stride. She set the box down exactly where the others had been stacked, straightened her back, and turned around to go get the next one. No pause, no complaint, no acknowledgement that she was the only woman on the crew. Devon studied her without meaning to. 29, maybe 30, about 5'9", shoulders broader than most women he'd seen outside of a gym. Her arms, visible below the sleeves of the Orange Company t-shirt, carried muscle that wasn't decorative. It was functional, built by repetition, not routine, built by carrying real weight up real stairs for real money. Her hair was braided tight against her scalp in neat cornrows, not a strand loose. Her work boots were scuffed and worn at the heels, but laced firm, double-knotted. Sweat beaded across her forehead, but her breathing was even, controlled. She wasn't winded. She was pacing herself the way someone does when they know the job is long and the day is longer. Something about her unsettled him. Not pity, not attraction. Something closer to confusion. A woman doing this work, carrying boxes that had to weigh 60, 70 pounds, matching pace with men who had 50 pounds of muscle on her. His brain filed it under unusual and tried to move on, but his eyes kept drifting back. His mother's voice surfaced without permission. "Nobody's going to carry you, Devon." But this time the words landed differently. He was watching someone else live them, someone who hadn't turned the lesson into a wall, someone who was just doing the work. No philosophy, no defense mechanism, just carrying. He shook it off. When Big Roy came up to check the placement of a bookshelf, Devon nodded toward the staircase where the woman had just disappeared. "She's one of yours." The question was casual, flat, but something underneath it twitched with surprise he didn't want to admit. Roy didn't look up from the bookshelf. "Michaela, yeah, she's mine. Been with me 14 months. He adjusted the shelf a quarter inch to the left. "Best I got. Stronger than half the men who quit on me." Devon waited for more. Roy didn't offer any. He just went back downstairs. And Devon went back to his phone. But his eyes kept finding the staircase. It happened just before noon. 2 of the crew were supposed to handle the refrigerator. A full-size Sub-Zero still bolted inside its wooden shipping crate. 350 pounds of stainless steel and compressed insulation. The kind of appliance that came with a manual thicker than a novel and a price tag that could cover 6 months of someone's rent. But Jerome, one of the younger guys on the crew, had twisted his ankle on the previous load. He was sitting on the second-floor landing with his boot unlaced, wincing every time he flexed his foot. The other guy, who was supposed to help, a stocky man named Curtis, had gone outside to drink water and cool down. Big Roy was at the truck inventorying the next round. Michaela stood at the base of the staircase, alone. The crate sat behind her like a monument. She looked at it, looked at the stairs, looked back at the crate. Then she walked over, crouched low, and placed both hands flat against the wooden frame. She didn't call for help, didn't shout for Roy, didn't wait for Curtis to come back inside. She tilted the crate 45 degrees, slowly, controlled. Then she pressed her back against the lower edge, planted her boots on the hardwood, and began to push, not with brute force, with technique. With the kind of knowledge that only comes from doing this 100 times before. She used her legs, not her arms, used gravity as a partner instead of fighting it. Shifted her weight with each step like a woman who had studied the physics of survival long before anyone handed her a textbook. First stair. The wood groaned beneath 350 pounds plus her own body weight. Her fingers gripped the edges of the crate knuckles, whitening. Second stair. Her breathing stayed even. Controlled inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. The rhythm of someone who had learned to measure effort the way marathoners measure miles. Third stair. Sweat slid down the back of her neck. A single drop traced the line of her spine and disappeared beneath the collar of her orange t-shirt. Fourth stair. Fifth. Sixth. Floor 1 to floor 2. She paused for 3 seconds at the landing. Not to rest, to reposition. She shifted the angle of the crate, adjusted her grip, and kept going. No one helped. 7th stair. 8th. Her boot slipped slightly on a worn patch of wood. She caught herself without a sound. Adjusted. Continued. 9th stair. 10th. Floor 2 to floor 3. Devon heard it from the 4th floor. A heavy, rhythmic scraping. Wood against wood. Slow and deliberate. He assumed 2 of the men were handling something large. He stepped into the hallway and looked down through the open stairwell, and froze. She was between the 2nd and 3rd floors. 1 woman, 1 refrigerator. 1 impossible task treated as routine. Her face was tight with effort, but empty of complaint. Her arms trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the sustained demand of holding 350 pounds in place while her legs did the climbing. Devon gripped the banister. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. She didn't know he was watching. She didn't look up. She didn't perform for an audience. She moved like someone who had been carrying impossible weight her whole life, not with drama, not with desperation, but with the quiet, grinding certainty of a person who knew that if she stopped, no one else would pick it up. 11th stair. 12th. Her boot hit the 3rd floor landing. She paused again. 2 seconds this time, wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her wrist. Then she pressed her shoulder into the crate and pushed. 13th stair. 14th. Floor 3 to floor 4. The final stretch. The stairs narrowed slightly near the top. She tilted the crate an extra degree to clear the banister. Her jaw clenched. The veins in her forearms stood out like rope pulled taut. 15th stair. 16th. She reached the top, slid the crate across the threshold into the hallway, set it down gently, not dropped, not shoved, placed, like it mattered, like everything she touched deserved care, even the things that belonged to someone else. She stood straight, rolled her shoulders once, wiped her palms on her jeans. Then she turned around and walked back down the stairs to get the next item. No pause, no celebration, no recognition requested or expected. Devon hadn't moved. He stood at the top of the stairwell, one hand still gripping the banister, watching her disappear around the bend between floors. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't reach for it. In 41 years, Devon Hayes had watched people move mountains with money, with power, with connections. He had never watched someone move one with her bare hands. Devon walked back into the penthouse. He sat down on a box marked office and stared at the wall. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it. Something had shifted. Not outside, inside. In the place behind his ribs, where logic lived and feelings were not allowed to visit without an appointment. He tried to name it. It wasn't pity. He'd walked past 1,000 people in worse shape than her and felt nothing but the slight acceleration of his own stride. It wasn't admiration, not exactly. Admiration was something he reserved for people who made money, who built things, who won. This was something else, something that didn't have a clean word in his vocabulary, something closer to disturbance. She wasn't weak. That was the problem. His entire framework for understanding people like her, people who worked physical jobs for hourly wages, people who carried things for a living, required them to be less than him, less capable, less disciplined, less strong. That was the deal he'd made with the universe. You give up comfort, you get to be tough. You get tough, you earn comfort. And once you have comfort, you're above the ones still carrying. But she hadn't been beneath him on that staircase. She'd been doing something he couldn't do, something his money couldn't do, something his entire empire, all $8.7 billion of it, could never replicate. She carried 350 pounds up 4 flights of stairs with no one watching, no one helping, no one clapping, and she did it like it was Tuesday. His mother's voice crept in again, uninvited, unwelcome. Nobody's gonna carry you, Devon. You carry yourself or you get left behind. He'd heard that sentence 10,000 times. He'd built a religion around it, preached it in boardrooms, used it to justify every cold decision he'd ever made. If you're struggling, carry harder. If you're drowning, swim faster. If you're poor, work more. No excuses, no exceptions, no mercy. But the woman on that staircase had just lived those words more literally than Devon ever had. She was carrying. Actually carrying. Not metaphorically, not philosophically. 350 pounds, one stair at a time with her actual body for $12 an hour. And Devon was sitting in a $14.2 million penthouse, telling himself he understood hard work. The gap between what he believed and what he'd just witnessed opened up beneath him like a crack in the foundation. Not wide enough to collapse anything, but wide enough to feel the draft. He preached self-reliance from a penthouse. She practiced it on a staircase with 350 pounds on her back. 6:47 p.m. The last box was placed. The truck was packed and ready to leave. Big Roy stood in the doorway of the penthouse with a clipboard going through the final walkthrough checklist with the efficiency of a man who'd done this 6,000 times. Devon signed the paperwork, wrote a check, added a tip that was generous by most standards but meaningless by his. Big Roy folded the check into his shirt pocket without looking at the amount, shook Devon's hand, and headed downstairs. Devon followed him out. Not to see the crew off. He told himself he wanted air. Told himself the penthouse was stuffy. Told himself anything except the truth, which was that he wanted one more look at her before she disappeared into a truck and drove out of his life forever. Michaela was sitting on the front steps of the brownstone, her back against the iron railing, a water bottle in one hand, her phone in the other. She was looking at the screen with a small, private smile, the kind of smile that didn't belong to the world. Devon caught a glimpse as he passed. A photograph. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, big grin, school uniform, missing one front tooth. She noticed Devon's shadow and put the phone away fast. Not guilty fast, protective fast, like she was tucking something precious back into a vault before anyone could see it. Devon stopped. His brain commanded him to say something meaningful, something worthy of what he'd witnessed on that staircase. Something that acknowledged the extraordinary thing this woman had done without being asked, without being seen, without being paid a single dollar more for it. Good work today, he said. 2 words. Flat. Corporate. The verbal equivalent of a form letter. He knew it was wrong the second it left his mouth. Knew it carried none of the weight that her staircase had carried. Knew it was the kind of thing a man said when he had no idea how to be human. Michaela looked up, brown eyes, steady. Unimpressed, just doing my job, she said. And she stood up, tucked her water bottle into her bag, and walked to the truck. No lingering. No second glance at the brownstone or the man standing in front of it. She climbed into the cab next to Curtis, pulled the door shut, and Big Roy pulled the truck away from the curb and into the river of Saturday evening traffic. Devon stood on the sidewalk, watching the truck until it turned the corner and vanished. That night, he went back to his old apartment on the Upper West Side. The penthouse wasn't ready for sleeping yet. No bed set up, no sheets unpacked, no reason to stay in 6,200 square feet of beautiful emptiness. He lay in his old bed and stared at the ceiling, but all he saw was a staircase, a wooden crate, a woman's hands gripping the edges, sweat on the back of a neck, boots on hardwood. One stair at a time. He opened his laptop, typed Henderson & Sons Moving Company into the search bar, found a basic website. Phone number, service area, a few reviews. No staff page, no employee bios, no mention of a woman named Michaela. He closed the laptop, opened it again, closed it again. He'd hired movers to carry his refrigerator, but she'd carried something into his penthouse that no amount of money could move back out. Sunday morning, 9:14 a.m. Devon sat at his kitchen counter with black coffee going cold in front of him. He picked up his phone and called Big Roy Henderson. The phone rang 5 times. Devon almost hung up. Then Roy answered, voice thick with weekend quiet. Henderson Moving. Roy, it's Devon Hayes, from yesterday. The Tribeca brownstone. A pause. Yeah, Mr. Hayes? Everything all right with the delivery? Something get damaged? No, everything's fine. Actually, I wanted to ask about one of your crew. There were a few scuffs on the banister near the 3rd floor. Nothing serious. I just wanted to understand how the bigger items were handled. It was a lie. Devon knew it was a lie. Roy probably knew it too, but the man didn't push. Which crew member you asking about? The woman. Another pause. Longer this time. Michaela. Yeah, Michaela, how long has she been with you? Roy's voice shifted. Not defensive. Measured. The way a man speaks when he's deciding how much to give away about someone he respects. 14 months. Showed up one morning asking if I had work. Told me she could lift anything my guys could lift. I didn't believe her. Gave her a trial day on a third-floor walk-up in Hoboken. She outworked 2 men who'd been with me 3 years. He paused. They quit. She didn't. Devon let the silence sit. Then he asked, "What else does she do, besides this?" Besides hauling furniture 6 days a week, Roy let out a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. She works the evening shift at a warehouse in Newark, sorting and packing, 4 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday. Devon did the math in his head. 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. moving, 4 p.m. to midnight at a warehouse. 6 days a week. Saturdays she's with me, moving only. Sundays she's off. Roy paused again. That's when she's with her boy. Her boy, the photograph on the phone, the school uniform, the missing tooth. She got family, Devon asked. Support someone helping her out. The line went quiet for a long time. When Roy spoke again, his voice was lower, careful, like he was handing over something he wasn't sure Devon deserved to hold. Mr. Hayes. Michaela Bennett, don't ask for support. She is the support. That girl carries more than refrigerators. The sentence landed in Devon's chest like a stone dropped into still water. He felt the ripples spread outward into places he hadn't visited in years. "Thank you, Roy," Devon said quietly, and he hung up. He sat there for a long time. Coffee completely cold now. Phone resting on the counter. The apartment humming with the kind of silence that follows a truth you didn't ask for but can't unhear. His phone buzzed. Denise. "Mr. Hayes, your Monday schedule is packed. Board meeting at 9, investor call at 11, lunch with the Goldman team at 1, property tour in Long Island City at 3. Should I send the car at 7:45 or 8? Denise, Devon said, ignoring every word she'd just spoken. "I need you to find some information for me. A woman named Michaela Bennett. Works for Henderson and Sons Moving. Lives in New Jersey, I think. Anything public. Address, background, whatever you can pull." A beat of silence on the other end. The kind of silence Denise Palmer used when she was choosing her words with surgical precision. "Mr. Hayes, that's borderline stalking. It's research. Research requires a thesis." "What exactly are you researching?" Devon opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know yet," he said. And for a man who always knew the answer before the question was finished, that might have been the most honest thing he'd said in 22 years. Michaela Bennett grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment on South Orange Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. The kind of building where the hallway always smelled like bleach and cooking oil, and the elevator worked maybe 3 days out of 7. Her mother left when Michaela was 4. No note, no phone call, no forwarding address, just an empty closet and a little girl standing in the kitchen doorway asking her father where Mama went. Her father, William Bennett, was a construction worker. Broad shoulders, hands like catcher's mitts. He poured concrete and laid rebar for 31 years for the same company and never once called in sick. He raised Michaela alone with the kind of love that didn't announce itself with words. It announced itself with packed lunches and braided hair and driving 45 minutes each way to make sure she got to the better school across town. He taught her to carry things when she was 9, not because he wanted a son, because he wanted a daughter who would never wait for someone else to move her life forward. They started with cinder blocks in the backyard, then bags of concrete mix from the truck, then lumber, then drywall. "Strong hands, strong heart, Michaela," he told her one evening while she rubbed the soreness out of her palms. "Don't let nobody tell you soft is the only way a woman can be." She carried those words the way she carried everything, close to the chest, without complaint, without display. By 16, Michaela was 5'9", with shoulders broader than half the boys in her class. She could outrun most of them too. Basketball became her language. The court was the one place where her body wasn't strange or too much or unfeminine. It was exactly right. She earned a full athletic scholarship to Rutgers University. business administration. The first person in her family to go to college. For 3 years, she was unstoppable. Dean's List, starting power forward, a future as real and solid as the concrete her father poured. Then senior year she got pregnant. The father was a junior named Deshawn who promised her the world over late-night study sessions and takeout containers, and a future he had no intention of building. When Michaela told him, he disappeared the same way her mother had. No note, no call. Just silence where a person used to be. She lost her scholarship. You can't play Division I basketball with a baby growing inside you. She tried to stay enrolled, but the math didn't work. Tuition without the scholarship was $14,000 a semester. She had $1,100 in savings. She was 4 classes short of her degree. 4 classes, 1 semester, close enough to taste, too far to reach. Khalil was born on a Tuesday in April, 6 pounds 11 ounces. He came into the world screaming and didn't stop for 3 months. Michaela held him through every minute of it, alone. Her father had passed 2 years earlier. Heart attack on a job site in Elizabeth. He was 57. Now it was just the 2 of them. There are 10 million single mothers in America. 80% of them work, but only 45% earn enough to keep their families above the federal poverty line. Most of them are invisible. Most of them are 1 paycheck away, 1 injury away, 1 broken down car away from losing everything they've built with their bare hands. Michaela was one of them. She lived in a shared apartment in East Orange. 1 bedroom for her and Khalil, $875 a month. The room fit a twin bed, a dresser, and a small plastic bin where Khalil kept his toys. His clothes hung in the closet on hangers that Michaela color-coded by day of the week, so mornings were faster. His school uniform was ironed every night, no matter how late she got home, no matter how much her arms ached from the day's work. A woman named Dolores, 67 years old, lived 2 doors down. She watched Khalil on weekday evenings when Michaela worked the warehouse shift, $50 a week cash. Dolores never raised the price. Michaela never missed a payment. 4 nights a week after Khalil fell asleep, Michaela sat on the floor of their bedroom with a laptop balanced on her knees and worked on her degree. Online classes through Rutgers. 4 courses left. She'd been chipping away at them for 2 years, 1 class per semester, because that's all she could afford after rent, food, childcare, and keeping the lights on. Khalil was 7 now, 2nd grade, quick with numbers, shy with strangers, loud with his mother. He drew pictures constantly, superheroes mostly, but his favorite subject was Michaela. In every drawing, she was enormous, twice the size of buildings, arms like tree trunks, lifting cars, lifting houses, lifting the sky. In one drawing, she held the entire earth above her head while tiny people cheered below. He gave it to her one Sunday morning with syrup still on his fingers. She didn't put it on the refrigerator. She didn't tape it to the wall where visitors could see. She folded it carefully along the creases and tucked it inside the door of her closet behind her work boots, where only she would find it. She didn't need the world to see it. She just needed to know it was there. 3 days later, Devin called Big Roy again. This time, he didn't bother with the furniture excuse. He asked if Henderson & Sons could handle a small supplemental delivery. A few boxes that hadn't made the original shipment. Artwork. Some fragile kitchen items. Nothing major. Maybe a 2-hour job. Roy said yes. Quoted him a price. Didn't ask questions. Devin didn't care about the boxes. He barely remembered what was in them. What he cared about was the crew. Specifically 1 member of the crew, and whether she'd be on the truck. Wednesday morning, 8:45. The Henderson truck pulled up to the Tribeca brownstone. Michaela was the 3rd person out. Same orange t-shirt, same tight cornrows, same boots. She moved with the same efficiency, the same silence, the same complete disinterest in being noticed. Devin had prepared. He'd ordered coffee and bagels from a place on Greenwich Street. Set everything up on the kitchen counter of the penthouse. Told Roy the whole crew was welcome to take a break whenever they needed. Roy thanked him. The crew ate. Michaela took a coffee black and a plain bagel. She sat on the floor near the window, legs crossed, eating without hurry. Away from the group. Not antisocial, just separate. like someone who'd learned that eating alone was faster and faster meant more time for work. Devon sat down next to her. Not close, a few feet away. Casual, the way a man sits when he's trying very hard to look like he's not trying at all. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Michaela looked at him sideways, chewing, unbothered. "How did you do it?" "The refrigerator, last Saturday, by yourself." She swallowed, took a sip of coffee. "Same way you do anything heavy. One step at a time. You don't think about the top. You think about the next stair." Devon waited for more. An explanation, a story, a complaint about the difficulty. Something he could respond to with sympathy or solutions. Nothing came. She just took another bite of her bagel. "I've never seen anyone do that," Devon said. "Not alone, not that weight." "Probably because you weren't looking," Michaela said. "Not sharp, not rude, just factual. The way someone states the temperature outside." Devon felt something shift in his chest, a door opening that he wasn't sure he wanted open. "You're right," he said quietly. "I probably wasn't." Michaela looked at him for the first time. Really looked. Not at the watch, not at the shoes, not at the penthouse. At him. And whatever she found there didn't impress her or frighten her or move her in any visible direction. "You always watch your movers this close?" she asked. "Or just the ones who look different?" The question landed like a clean punch to the sternum. Devon opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out that felt honest enough to say. Michaela stood up, brushed bagel crumbs off her jeans. "Break's over," she said, and walked back toward the staircase. She hadn't asked for his attention. She hadn't asked for anything. And that somehow was the thing he couldn't stop thinking about. The following Friday, Devon did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He drove himself. No Franklin. No Range Rover. He took his own car, a black Mercedes he'd almost forgotten he owned. Drove it through the Holland Tunnel, onto the Turnpike, and into East Orange, New Jersey. A neighborhood of chain-link fences and check-cashing stores and churches on every other corner. He didn't go to Michaela's apartment. He didn't have the address, and Denise had refused to find it. Instead, he parked across the street from Lincoln Elementary School at 2:45 in the afternoon and waited. The bell rang at 3. Children poured out in waves. Bright jackets, mismatched backpacks, laughter that bounced off the brick walls like music played at full volume. Devon sat behind the wheel, watching, not entirely sure what he was looking for. Then he saw her. Michaela came around the corner on foot, not from a car, walking. She was still in her warehouse clothes, dark cargo pants, steel-toed boots, a gray hoodie with the sleeves pushed up past her elbows. Her backpack hung on one shoulder, heavy and lopsided. Her face carried the kind of tiredness that lives beneath the skin, the kind you don't wash off in the shower, the kind you carry like a second skeleton underneath your bones. But the moment Khalil burst through the school doors and spotted her, everything changed. Michaela dropped to her knees, both arms wide open, and her face transformed. The exhaustion didn't disappear, not exactly. It was still there in the lines around her eyes, the slight droop of her shoulders. But something else covered it, something brighter, something fierce and tender at the same time, like sunlight breaking through a crack in a wall. Khalil ran into her arms at full speed, small body crashing into hers. She caught him like he weighed nothing. Like after carrying 350 pounds up 4 flights of stairs, a 7-year-old boy was the lightest thing in the world. "Mama, I drew you lifting a house." He held up a piece of construction paper. Crayon lines, wild colors. A giant woman holding a building above her head, smiling. Michaela laughed. The first time Devon had heard her laugh. It was low and warm and completely free. "Only a house," she said, standing up with Khalil, balanced on her hip. "I thought you'd draw me lifting the whole block." Khalil giggled into her neck. She kissed the top of his head and started walking. 2 figures, one small, one strong, moving down the sidewalk together like nothing else in the world existed. Devon sat in the car, both hands on the wheel, engine off. And for the first time in 41 years, he saw his mother. Not a memory, not the faded photograph on his nightstand. He saw Pauline Hayes in Michaela Bennett, the same walk, the same shoulders carrying invisible weight that would break most people in half. The same face, lighting up at the sight of a child. The same rough, strong, beautiful hands, holding a boy like he was the only thing that mattered. Because he was. Pauline used to walk 4 blocks to pick Devon up from school. Same tired clothes, same heavy backpack, same transformation, the instant she saw him. Like the world was a furnace, and he was the only cool water in it. His mother had died carrying weight no one saw. This woman was still carrying it. And she was still standing. The voice came back. His mother's voice, but this time it said the part he'd buried for 22 years. The part he'd cut out of her lesson like a surgeon removing something he didn't want to feel. But when you make it baby, you reach back. You always reach back. For the first time, Devon heard the whole sentence. Both halves. The carrying and the reaching. The strength and the softness. The lesson his mother had actually taught, not the half-truth he'd weaponized. He sat in the car until Michaela and Khalil disappeared around the corner. Then he sat for another 10 minutes. The engine cooling. The street going quiet. The afternoon light turning gold against the brick buildings. He reached back, not with his hand. Not yet. But with something deeper. Something that had been frozen inside him since the morning his mother collapsed in a hotel laundry room and never got up. He reached back with his memory. And it hurt. And it was time. 11:47 p.m. Friday night. The warehouse parking lot in Newark sat under orange sodium lights that made everything look like a faded photograph. Cracked asphalt, a chain-link fence with razor wire, 3 loading docks, a dumpster overflowing with flattened cardboard, the kind of place where nothing beautiful was supposed to happen. Devon's Mercedes looked absurd, parked between a rusted Honda Civic and a pickup truck with a cracked taillight. He was wearing a charcoal suit, no tie, but still, a suit, in a warehouse parking lot. At midnight, he'd been waiting for 23 minutes when the side door opened and workers started filing out. Men in high-visibility vests, women in steel-toed boots, tired bodies moving toward tired cars. Shift over. Life waiting on the other side of a drive home. Michaela came out fourth. Backpack on. Hoodie up. Head down. She was walking toward the bus stop at the corner when she noticed the Mercedes. Then the man leaning against it. She stopped. 10 feet away. Her body went still, but not with fear. With assessment. The way an animal evaluates a sound in the dark. Not frozen. Ready. What are you doing here? Her voice was flat, controlled. How do you know where I work? Roy mentioned the warehouse, Devon said. He kept his hands visible, kept his distance. I wanted to talk to you, at midnight, in a parking lot. She didn't phrase it as a question. I know how this looks. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a rich man who doesn't understand boundaries showing up where I earn $12.65 an hour to stand on concrete for 8 hours straight. She shifted her weight. Say what you came to say. Devon took a breath, stripped away the business language, stripped away the polish, tried to speak the way his mother would have spoken. Plain, direct, true. I want to help you. I can pay for you to finish your degree. All 4 classes. I can connect you with job placement, better housing for you and your son. I have resources that could change things for you. Real resources, no strings. Michaela stared at him. The parking lot hummed with the sound of distant traffic and buzzing lights. A car pulled out behind them, headlights sweeping across her face. She didn't blink. I don't know you, she said. Quiet now. Measured. Rich men don't show up at midnight to help strangers. Every time somebody offered me something for nothing, it came with a price I couldn't see until it was too late. Khalil's father offered me the world too. She paused. I've learned to carry my own weight. This isn't like that, Devon said. That's what they all say. I grew up like you. Brownsville. Single mom. 3 jobs. She died when I was 19. Michaela's expression shifted. Just barely. A crack in the wall, but she sealed it fast. I'm sorry about your mother. That doesn't mean I owe you my trust. You don't owe me anything. I'm not asking you to owe me. I'm asking you to let me help. Why? One word. The hardest question he'd ever been asked. Harder than any investor interrogation. Harder than any board challenge. Because every answer he had sounded like a transaction, and she'd already told him she was done with those. Because my mother never got help, Devon said, his voice catching on something sharp inside his throat. And she should have. And I have more money than I know what to do with, and I've never once used it the way she would have wanted me to. Silence. Long. Heavy. The kind that fills a parking lot the way water fills a basement. Slowly and completely. Michaela looked at him. Really looked. The same way she'd looked at the refrigerator before she decided to carry it up 4 flights alone. Measuring. Calculating. Deciding whether the weight was worth the risk. No, she said. Not angry. Not grateful. Just clear. I don't take things from men I don't know. I don't put my son's stability in somebody else's hands. I've been doing this alone for 7 years, and I'll keep doing it alone until I can't. And when I can't, I'll figure something else out. But I won't owe you. I won't owe anyone. She pulled her backpack higher on her shoulder. Good night, Mr. Hayes. And she walked toward the bus stop, steady, unhurried. The same rhythm she used on staircases, 1 step at a time. Devon stood in the parking lot. Alone. His suit absorbing the cold. His car worth more than everything Michaela owned combined. His offer rejected by a woman who carried refrigerators for a living and still had more backbone than anyone in his entire portfolio of contacts. He could buy buildings. He couldn't buy her trust. If you're watching a woman turn down a billionaire's money because she'd rather carry 350 pounds up 4 flights of stairs than owe anyone anything, and that hits different, subscribe. Now let's continue. Devon drove back to the penthouse that night. Not to unpack, not to organize, just to sit. The place was full of things and empty of meaning. Boxes stacked against walls, furniture arranged by movers who didn't know him and didn't care where the couch faced. And standing in the kitchen, gleaming under recessed lighting, was the Sub-Zero refrigerator, the one Michaela had carried up 4 flights alone. It stood there like a monument, stainless steel, perfectly positioned, door closed, inside nothing, not a single item on a single shelf, just cold, clean, expensive emptiness. Devon stared at it for a long time. He'd spent 22 years filling his life the same way, buying beautiful containers and leaving them hollow. Penthouse, portfolio, bank accounts, all full of numbers, all empty of the one thing his mother had actually wanted him to carry forward. He'd kept the first half of her lesson like armor. Carry yourself. He'd welded it to his chest and used it to justify every cold decision, every ignored plea, every person he walked past without seeing. But the second half, the part she whispered when she thought he was sleeping, he'd buried that so deep he'd forgotten it existed. Reach back. She hadn't said it as a suggestion. She'd said it as a command. The same weight as carry yourself. Equal, inseparable, 2 legs of the same truth. And he'd been walking on one leg for 2 decades, wondering why he kept falling over. His mother hadn't died so he could become a man who watched from windows. She died so he could become a man who walked down the stairs. Saturday morning. Devon canceled everything. The investor brunch, the property tour, the call with his London team. Denise protested. He didn't explain. He just said, I need the day. And she'd worked for him long enough to know when that meant, don't push. He spent 3 hours on the phone, not with lawyers, not with accountants, not with the usual machinery of wealth. He called Rutgers University. Asked to speak with the Office of Adult and Continuing Education. Got transferred twice. Put on hold for 11 minutes. Finally reached a woman named Dr. Carolyn Webb, the Director of Degree Completion Programs. He asked one question. What would it take to create a scholarship fund for single parents who left college within 1 year of finishing their degrees? Dr. Webb paused. Then she talked for 45 minutes. She told him about the thousands of students, overwhelmingly women, overwhelmingly mothers, who dropped out in their final year because of pregnancy, financial collapse, or family emergencies. She told him about the bureaucratic nightmare of re-enrollment, about credits that expire, fees that stack, childcare that doesn't exist on campus after 6 p.m. Devin listened the way he listened to market analysis, with precision, with focus, with the part of his brain that solved problems systematically. By noon, he had a structure: the Hayes Meridian Scholars Program, a renewable scholarship covering tuition, books, and childcare subsidies for single parents returning to complete undergraduate degrees at Rutgers. Open application. No personal referrals required. No connection to Devin's name visible to applicants. The fund would be administered through the university, not through his company. Anyone who qualified could apply. Michaela would be one of them. But she wouldn't be the only one, and she'd never have to know it came from him. Then he called a contact at the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, asked about their affordable housing programs in the Newark and East Orange area, down payment assistance for first-time homebuyers earning below 60% of the area median income. Real programs, real pathways, not charity. Infrastructure. There's a difference between giving someone a fish and teaching them to fish. But there's a third option most people forget. Sometimes you just need to make sure the river isn't blocked. That afternoon, Devin called Big Roy. "Roy, I need a favor." Another move. Roy's voice was dry. "Patient." "No. Rutgers is launching a scholarship program for single parents finishing their degrees. It covers tuition, books, childcare, open application. No strings. I need you to tell Michaela about it." Silence on the line, long enough for Devin to hear Roy breathing, long enough to feel the weight of what he was asking. "I'm not asking you to sell her anything," Devin added. "I'm not asking you to push. I'm asking you to mention it. An email from the school, a flyer, whatever. Let it be her choice." "Why don't you tell her yourself?" Roy asked. "Because she'd say no. She'd think it was me buying my way in, and she'd be half right." Another pause. "You really just want to help?" Devin closed his eyes, saw his mother's hands, rough as sandpaper, holding his face like glass. My mother was her Roy. 30 years ago. 3 jobs, no degree, no help. She died at 57 because nobody reached back. I'm not going to let that happen twice. Roy was quiet for a very long time. When he spoke, his voice had changed, softer. The way a man sounds when he recognizes something true. "I'll tell her. But if she says no, you leave it alone. Deal." For the first time in his career, Devin Hayes used his money not to acquire something but to build a door. And then he stepped away from it. 3 weeks later, Michaela Bennett received an email from the Rutgers Office of Adult and Continuing Education. Subject line: "You may be eligible for the Hayes Meridian Scholars Program." She almost deleted it. She'd gotten enough scam emails to fill a landfill, but something made her pause. The Rutgers logo, the .edu domain, the specificity of the eligibility criteria, which matched her situation so precisely, it felt like someone had written it with her file open on their desk. She didn't apply right away. She called the school, spoke with Dr. Webb directly, asked every question a woman who'd been burned by promises knows to ask. Is there a repayment clause? Is there a GPA requirement? What happens if I miss a semester? Who's funding this? How many people are in the program? Dr. Webb answered every one. 47 applicants in the first cohort. 12 accepted so far. Fully funded for 2 years. No repayment. No corporate sponsor visibility. Just a private donor who wished to remain anonymous. Michaela applied on a Sunday night after Khalil fell asleep. She was accepted 9 days later. Then she called Devin. He was sitting in his office at One World Trade when his phone rang. Unknown number. "New Jersey area code," he answered. "I know it was you." Her voice, steady, not angry, not grateful, something in between, something new. "The scholarship," she continued. "I checked. It's real. It's for a lot of people, not just me. That's the only reason I'm calling. Because you didn't make it about me. You made it about everyone like me." Devin leaned back in his chair. The Manhattan skyline stretched out behind him, glittering and indifferent. "You don't owe me anything, Michaela." "I know," she said, and her voice cracked just slightly. just enough to hear. That's why I'm saying thank you. Because I can say it without it feeling like a contract. Silence on the line. Not uncomfortable. Not empty. The kind of silence that happens when two people are standing on opposite sides of a bridge and both decide at the same time to take a step forward. 4 classes, Devon said quietly. 1 semester. 1 semester, Michaela repeated. And I'm doing it on my own. My grades, my work, my hours. You built the door. I'm walking through it myself. I wouldn't expect anything less. She almost laughed. Almost. You're a strange man, Mr. Hayes. So I've been told. The call lasted another 40 seconds. No promises, no plans, no next steps beyond the ones Michaela would take on her own. She hung up first. Devon sat with the phone in his hand, staring at the screen after it went dark. He didn't save her. He never could have. She'd been saving herself her whole life. What he did was clear the road so she didn't have to carry the weight uphill 8 months later. Michaela Bennett walked across a stage at Rutgers University in a black cap and gown and received a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. 4 classes, 1 semester. 14 years after she'd first set foot on that campus as a freshman with a basketball scholarship and a future as wide as the sky, Khalil sat in the 3rd row, 8 years old now, wearing a button-down shirt Michaela had ironed that morning. When they called her name, he stood up on his chair and clapped so loud the woman next to him flinched. He didn't care. His mother was walking across a stage, and the whole world needed to hear about it. Michaela didn't cry. She smiled. The same smile she gave Khalil at the school gate. The same smile she gave the staircase before she started climbing. Not soft, not fragile, just real. 3 weeks after graduation, she started as a management trainee at a logistics company in Edison, New Jersey. Not Devon's company, not connected to Devon's fund. Not a favor, not a phone call, not a name dropped over lunch. She applied online, interviewed twice, got the offer based on her resume, her degree, and the fact that when they asked her how she handled pressure, she said, "I once carried a 350-pound refrigerator up 4 flights of stairs by myself." On a Saturday, before lunch, they hired her on the spot. 2 months after that, she moved. A 2-bedroom apartment in Montclair, New Jersey. 2nd floor of a quiet building with a small yard out back. Purchased through the down payment assistance program she'd qualified for. Not gifted. Earned. Every dollar of the down payment saved from 2 jobs over 14 months. Khalil had his own room for the first time in his life. He stood in the doorway and stared at it for 3 full minutes before he walked in. Touched the walls, opened the closet, turned the light switch on and off 4 times just because he could. "This is mine," he whispered. "This is yours," Michaela said. On moving day, a second-hand refrigerator arrived. Small, white, a few dents on the side. Nothing like the Sub-Zero she'd carried up the Tribeca brownstone. But it needed to go up 1 flight of stairs. And when the delivery guys started positioning themselves on either end, Michaela waved them off. "I got it," she said. Khalil watched from the top of the stairs, eyes wide. "Mama, why don't you let the movers do it?" Michaela looked up at him, smiled. "Because I can." Devon changed too. Not in the ways magazines would notice. Not in the ways his investors would track. The changes were quieter, structural. The kind that happen when a man rebuilds the foundation of a building he's been living in for 20 years without ever checking the basement. He created an internal fund at Hayes Meridian Capital, childcare subsidies for employees who were single parents, tuition reimbursement for hourly workers pursuing degrees, a mentorship program connecting junior staff with senior leadership, regardless of job title. The maintenance crew, the security team, the cleaning staff, they were included. For the first time, Denise noticed first. "You're different," she told him one morning, setting his coffee down. Not as a compliment, as an observation. The way a doctor notes a change in a patient's blood work. "Different?" how Devon asked. "You said please to the janitor yesterday. In 11 years I've never heard you say please to anyone below a vice president." Devon didn't respond. But he didn't argue either. He and Michaela became friends. Not the kind that required dinners or schedules or social media posts. The kind that existed in phone calls on Sunday evenings after Khalil went to bed. The kind that lived in text messages about nothing important and everything that mattered. She told him about her first week managing a team of 12. He told her about the maintenance worker at his building who'd been a civil engineer in Haiti before immigrating. Neither of them talked about the staircase. They didn't need to. It was always there, underneath everything. One Thursday afternoon, Devin drove to Khalil's school for the second-grade science fair. Michaela had mentioned it in passing. He showed up uninvited, sat in the back, watched. Khalil's project was about levers and mechanical advantage. A poster board with diagrams. A small wooden model showing how a lever multiplies force, and a hand-drawn picture of a woman pushing a large box up a ramp with arrows showing the direction of applied force. When it was his turn to present, Khalil stood in front of the class with his hands behind his back and spoke clearly the way his mother spoke. Measured, confident, no wasted words. My project is about how you move heavy things without being the strongest person in the room. My mom taught me. You don't need to be the strongest. You need to know where to put the weight. Devin's throat tightened. He looked across the room. Michaela sat in the second row, still in her work clothes laptop bag at her feet. She was watching her son with the kind of pride that doesn't announce itself. It just glows. Steady and quiet, like a pilot light that never goes out. And Devin understood. This was legacy. Not buildings. Not portfolios. Not foundations with names on them. This, a 7-year-old boy standing in front of his classmates, explaining physics he learned from watching his mother carry impossible things. Knowledge passed from strong hands to small ones. Love disguised as leverage. 2 years later, Devin stood at a podium in a conference hall in downtown Newark. 300 people in the audience. Investors, housing advocates, educators, journalists, city officials. Behind him, a banner stretched across the stage. The Pauline Hayes Foundation for Working Families, named for his mother. The woman who carried 3 jobs and a child and never once asked the world to carry her back. The woman whose lesson he'd finally learned to hear in full. The foundation offered scholarships for single parents returning to college, job training programs matched to local industry needs, childcare subsidies, down payment assistance for first-time homebuyers, and a workforce reentry program designed not by consultants, but by people who'd actually lived it. Sitting in the front row wearing a navy blazer she'd bought with her own paycheck was Michaela Bennett. Not as a recipient, not as a guest of honor, as a member of the foundation's advisory board, operations manager at her company now, promoted twice in 18 months. She brought something to the board that no MBA could teach. She knew what a single mother needed at 2 a.m. When the baby was crying and the rent was due and the car wouldn't start and the world felt like it was made of stairs that only went up. She knew because she'd been there. Because some mornings she was still there. Khalil sat beside her, 9 years old, drawing in a notebook. Devin glanced over during his speech and caught a glimpse of the page. A woman, giant, lifting something heavy. And behind her for the first time a house. Small and square with a triangle roof and a yellow door. A home, real, hers. Devin's eyes met Michaela's across the room. She didn't wave, didn't nod, just held his gaze for a moment. Steady, and in that moment he saw her hands. The same hands that had gripped a wooden shipping crate on a staircase in Tribeca. The same hands that had pushed 350 pounds of steel up 4 flights without a sound. They were holding a pen now, taking notes, shaping policy. But they were the same hands. They would always be the same hands. His mother had said, "Nobody's going to carry you, Devin. You carry yourself or you get left behind." She was right. But she'd also said, "When you make it, baby, you reach back. You always reach back." And, for 22 years, Devin had forgotten half the truth. He'd taken the armor and left the heart behind. It took a woman carrying a 350-pound refrigerator up 4 flights of stairs alone, unpaid in dignity, invisible to a world that walked past her every day to remind him that strength was never about what you could lift. It was about who you reached back for after you put it down. He'd hired movers to fill his penthouse, but the woman who carried the refrigerator had filled something he didn't even know was empty. The stairwell was 4 flights. The distance between watching and helping was much shorter. It only took 1 step. He just had to walk down. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you of someone who's been carrying more than they should, share it with them. Subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. This is a fictional story created for educational and inspirational purposes. The characters and events are not real, but the struggles they represent are. I wrote this story because I believe we walk past people like Michaela every single day. We see the uniform, the sweat, the heavy lifting, and we look away. But behind every person doing work we'd never do ourselves, there's a full life, a family, a dream deferred but not destroyed. If you've ever been Michaela carrying weight no one sees, I want you to know your strength is not invisible. Someone sees you. And if you've ever been Devin, watching from above, comfortable in your distance, maybe today is the day you walk down the stairs. If you or someone you know is a single parent navigating workforce reentry programs like NACA, the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America Pell Grants, and local workforce development boards offer real support, you don't have to carry it alone. And asking for help is not the same as weakness. It's strategy. See you in the next story.